Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And today I am here with Jeff Waters of Team Jackpot. Very excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it's good to jump on especially because we're getting ready to start with the whole new episodes coming out soon and all that. Like, we're not going to be in them, but there's still a lot of exciting stuff that's going to be going on. So to get me on before all that exciting things happen, it'll be good because you're going to be stacked with things to talk about.
That is likely true. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so um, I mean, really, like I was going to say, last season was a really good season for you, but really since Jackpot has come into the fold, you've been really successful. So, whether we were talking about last year or the year before, still
Mm.
just really great things. Um, you know, the season last year, it started off against Deadlift, which is, an interesting robot. You actually had lost to Deadlift the year before in Bounty Hunters. Um, and you had some drive issues in the match, it looked like, but you still managed to come back and be able to attack them. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a judge's decision. There was a little bit of back and forth, but kind of tell me what you remember about that particular match.
The thing I remember from that is we were still using kind of like the 2.0 drive version of the drive. So all the prototyping and stuff we did in the off season that was on that drive. Like we didn't refresh it or anything like that. We actually ended up having like hex keys going straight into bushings, which that was a whole story behind that. But so the drive had a few hours on it, which is a lot for a combat robot at that point. So the drive just gave out during that fight because they were pushing it hard. If you notice toward when Ace comes in and grabs them, we're over in the corner and I'm gyroing it, trying to get it to break loose. Eventually, it comes down and we snap the drive chain on it, allowing me to free up the drive and allow me to get back over to them.
I mean, it worked. You they always say that you don't want it to go to the judges because you never really know how that's going to go down. And certainly Jackpot has the knockout capability. But I mean, a win is a win. And that still, definitely helped you with a good positive start to the season. Because from there, I don't really think it got easier
No,
necessarily.
it really didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing is, speaking of not getting easier, that the next fight that you had was against Malice, which was
Which a
really
good friend of hers.
yeah, exactly. It was interesting because, you've been on that team, that robot, but then you also know that that's a very powerful robot. So, it's kind of a twofold thing. So basically you had your heartbreaker weapon versus their rolling blackout, and there was a lot of weapon on weapon shots. Including at one point there was a light that was broken in the battle box, which was I mean, I always love to see stuff like that. It's just so fun. Um, and I thought, towards the end it was interesting because Malice got to a point where they started to kind of do the crab walking, and then Jackpot started to smoke a little bit. And thankfully, at that point, the count out started for them, because I'm not sure, if Jackpot was getting to a point where, something would have gone worse, for you.
So that smoke actually was belt smoke. It was so I think it would be the left side. Yeah, the left side motor on one of the impacts slid forward a little bit, so it wasn't fully tensioned under the belt. So we're only powering that weapon off of one motor at the time. So the other belt slipping over the other weapon pulley, and it just has no load on it, so it's spinning at like two to three times the speed RPM wise. So it's creating all the smoke.
So, I mean, did you have a pretty good sense of what you thought that they were going to come at you with in that match because of the fact that you know that team?
I know I was on Malice up until maybe about a month before season 5 happened. So I wasn't on Malice at an event at any point, but I was in that process of the design and all that. So I helped a lot with that. So I knew what to really do with them, and I knew their weak point going into last season was their weapon ESCs. So I know if I kept their weapon like if I kept their weapon under a lot of stress, it would eventually give out or eventually. And I know the other issue Malice used to have is the drive motors on the back of the P3 gearboxes sometimes would come loose, and that's why they started crab walking. But actually, what did their weapon in is when we got one of the hits on their back, we sliced one of the wires running into their weapon motor.
That'll do it. Yeah, I mean that was definitely a solid win. One thing that I thought was interesting is because I had to go back and check a couple of times, and I'm like, Jackpot only had 2 matches during the regular season, because I mean that happens
Right?
sometimes, but not normally with like a bot
Wins.
that's so good. Was that
I
like planned, or how did that end up happening?
Well, and now that we can actually talk about it, because before everyone was like, "Oh, well," they were kind of avoiding the whole thing. We were really time constrained on filming time because we literally filmed 3 shows. You know, again, you filmed the main show going on, and then you had the tournament. We were done with the tournament by like the end of the first week. But normally you have 2 weeks to do that because you had to finish the tournament with Tantrum and all that because you needed to know who's going into the main thing. So about it, we had so bounty hunters and the main tournament last few rounds were going on at the same time. So that's why we weren't in bounty hunters this season
Okay.
because we made it too far into the tournament before they all got selected. So if we would have lost the Tombstone, we probably would have been in some type of bounty and try to get into the Golden Bowl stuff going on, or the Sin City Slugfest. That's what it was. But well, it's up to about a week before. I'd say actually no, about 4 days. So 4 film days left after Bounty Hunters and everything else because they had to do the Slugfest. So that's also why there might be a few grudge matches too that go on that are not official tournament matches that will be shown eventually.
That's pretty interesting. I can't wait to see it for sure. Yeah, so I mean, like you mentioned about Tombstone, that had to be like amazing. Everybody wants to fight Tombstone. I think like across the teams that I've interviewed, almost everyone has said that they want to fight Tombstone or
Yeah,
they want to fight them again. That's just how everybody is. In that match, there was a massive hit right at the beginning. And I mean, there were parts of Jackpot that were actually hanging out, but you were still moving pretty normally, and Tombstone was just kind of going in circles at that point. I mean, when you saw that, did you kind of have a pretty good sense of, it's over, you've got this?
so it was a lot of it was yeah, like a lot of people like to say they strategically are thinking throughout the match, and most are not really. We're just like we're so zoned in. We just know, especially with my strategy of just like my we do a little bit of a mix between my fists in your face and also my fists in your fists because there's been points where our weapon won't the robot is hit before our weapon hits sometimes, so we have to tank it. So with that Tombstone one, I didn't notice the robot was dangling, like the parts were dangling off the robot until Lucas tapped me on the shoulder and told me, hey, you need to slow down. You're going to short the robot out. Because it was the second hit that the top plate flew off. So there's that first hit. We both go to the opposite corners of the arena. I bounce good. I come right back in. We do it again. Then I come right back in for a third one, and Tombstone's over in his starting square, and our top plate's gone somewhere. Then the batteries are hanging out. But we cross-linked the robot, so if those batteries did come disconnected, we'd been fine. But it's just it would be running on low power, half the potential power.
I mean, I think Tombstone's probably one of those robots though that when you fight Ray, like even if you can manage to win, you're probably not going to come out of it 100% intact because Tombstone is just so powerful.
Oh no, unless you like get a really good shot on him or get it done quickly, you're going to be throwing away that robot at the end of the fight. You don't win against Tombstone. You just lose less than he did.
That's true. But yeah, so I mean, like that had to be like a big high for your team, to get that win, especially in the tournament. Now, interestingly enough, then you went up against Blip, who was a rookie bot this last year, but still, it's Aaron Hill's bot, and one thing about Aaron Hill is he knows how to build a super durable robot. I mean, obviously Tantrum winning the whole thing, like they're just both built really well. Um, they were able to flip you a couple of times, and then Jackpot. It looked like you just kind of landed like on your face and couldn't really do anything from that point. Sadly, I think that the lasting image from the end of that match is just Jackpot flipped over with the oh heck on the bottom. That's like burned into my brain. But I mean, like, what was your strategy? What was your plan against Blip, and what ended up happening?
So the strategy going into Blip changed like 3 times before we got into that fight. Originally, we were like, I wish we went with the second strategy, but I was like, I woke up that morning and I was like, we need to put something on the front to try to maybe hopefully get under him or something. So that's actually what did us in, because they went like this. So like it can get stuck on its face without the forks, but the forks kind of just made it easier. But it's actually what did us in before that is when we started. I know Blip could only turn right, because if it turns left, it wheelies, or vice. If it turns left, it wheelies. If it turns right, it goes down. So that's why when I came out, I went around them like this and did that whole jousting circle that I almost do that on every match now, just because it's enough to get me up to speed. So I went through. We got that first few hits. We knocked off some of their wedgelets in the front, and that was one of the things that did us in. Is I got stuck on one of those wedgelets. If you see when we're pivoting like this, one of those wedgelets got stuck in our wheel and got us high centered on it. That's when he came around, pushed us back, pushed us into the wall. When that happened, we dug in hard, and we almost ripped off his flipper. Like, there's a huge gouge about yay long, about half inch, exactly one blade width wide. And we actually got deep enough that I would like to find a picture of it. Aaron might have it somewhere. We nicked the mechanism inside of the robot that runs the flipper. Like there's a little 1/4 inch like milled cut out of it, of how close we were to disabling their weapon right there.
Oh wow, that's like it's just one of those things. Like think how different that could have been. I mean, if you had beat them, then you would have, I believe, gone up against Hydra next. Which I don't know that I don't think that's any better. No. It's just two very very powerful flipper bots. So I guess lessons learned, and maybe next year go in with a different strategy for those robots.
That's kind of what we all went with this year. Is last year that first season, so season 5, we struggled a lot against the horizontal rotator, because we didn't have the whole thing. So we added a bunch of stuff that we learned and threw stuff on it so we can fight horizontals better, which we saw. We ever since rotated, we haven't lost a horde. Well, I take that back. We remars, but we weren't configured for a horizontal. We literally ran the robot as it was pictured against a horizontal, which was kind of a dumb move, but I could throw away the robot and build a new one now. So, but we took what we learned from season 5, applied to it, and got better about horizontals. So we're taking what we learned from season 6, and we're going to apply that to doing better against control bots.
That's a good plan, because there definitely are some of those that are very good as well. Speaking of looking at some things for next year, so number one, I know that I've been seeing a lot of content about potential design changes and things like that. I know the roulette wheel thing that I saw was really cool. I love that. What kinds of things are you looking at doing?
We have a few different things. We have like 3 main setups we're going for next year. We're doing like an anti-control bot type setup, a full-on, big disc, no armor setup, which is like a big old roulette wheel setup. Then we have it's going to almost look like the horizontal configuration is almost identical to what it was last year. We're literally using the same, well, not the same exact wedge, but no modifications on it. We kept the bolt pattern the same on the new one, so we can bolt it right to the front. Same weapon shape. We just changed the hub a little bit, so we're not throwing away the hubs after each fight. Then we beefed up the self rider, so the self rider is going to have a full-on clutch in it. Has a custom gearbox that's going into it. Then you saw the little spinny wheels that we have on it too, so those actually will spin, just as a little aesthetic thing.
Yeah, and I know I had suggested, I feel very strongly that you need a self-rider that resembles a slot machine handle. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, that's what. So that's what the one on B1, the one that had, it was the Harbor Freight winch one, was supposed to, we painted it up to look like a slot machine. Then the one that we used this most recent season, it's supposed to have decorative balls on the end of it, but we were so close on weight that even as I said earlier, like we had to actually take off the plastic panel on the back of Jackpot when we fought Malice, because we were a pound overweight.
Yeah, that's unfortunate when it's like so close and you have to pick something to adjust in order to make sure that you're, within the right range there. Also, speaking of next season, I know I often try to ask the teams, and especially for you, since, you haven't fought a lot of people at this point because you've been here for a couple of seasons. If you could, think of a couple of bots out there that you have not had a match against yet that you would love to fight, who comes to mind?
I have a few actually. I can list. One I almost got it to happen at Remars, because I want to fight Mad Catter, because I fight Calvin a lot at the local scene, so we want to fight each other at the big scene. Cobalt I think would be fun. If they ever come back, Death Roll, because we always get compared to Death Roll, so that'd be a good fight to have happen. And probably any like the old guard, because I've gone against Donald, I've gone against Ray. I would like to go against a few more of the old guards before they eventually are no longer around. Because people like Aaron, people like Calvin, and all the young guys, they're going to be around for the next 5-10 years. So I'll be able to see them at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we need to start a Death Roll needs to come back campaign, because they are one of my favorite robots of all time. I love anything that takes a concept and makes it like extremely literal, but in a really cool way. And that's one of the reasons
Mhm.
why I love Jackpot is it's taking that Vegas concept and turning it into a robot. And they've basically taken Australia and crocodiles and turned that into a robot. So I think that's amazing.
That's kind of like what we it's like we like try to be so on point of branding because you know there's only a select few teams that have their branding on point. Like you got Witch Doctor, you got Hypershock. Malice is getting really good with their branding on all that. People are starting to realize that whole supervillain thing that they got going on. So once you nail the branding, it really like it's not just the branding is just as important as the robot itself, like making the bot itself. Because without branding, you're not going to get in next. You won't get in. Well, you might not get in. You get a lot of times you will get like more mainstream fights if you're like a popular robot. You got to play the show, and also got to play the sport.
And I would say that's one thing that's changed more over the course of time. Because I've talked to some builders who have been doing this for a while, and back in the day you didn't necessarily have to think so much about like your team's outfits, and you didn't really have to think about that. You just had to think about building a really destructive robot that's going to tear the other robot apart, and that's it. And now today you have to do so much more, because it's a show, and you have to be able to sell that. And I mean, that's definitely something that I think Jackpot does very well. And I'm seeing that more and more across the board with the teams. Um, so yeah, and actually, I don't want to get into too many of the like actual results of Remars for anybody who wants to wait and see it and stuff like that. But talk a little bit about that experience from a general perspective, because that had to be really cool to be able to be at that event.
I think we can talk about the Malice Jackpot one because it wasn't an official card fight. That was actually kind of funny because we after the break between the semifinals and the finals, they threw us in, but they didn't have any like walkout or music or anything. They just loaded us in the box, and they said, "Welcome back, everyone." Then it was 3, 2, 1 fight. They weren't prepared for us at all. Like we had to, not to get too in the whole technical side, but like I had to file all my paperwork and stuff for the event after the event. Because it was just like, oh, we're here, and Malice came here. Malice is on the wall, but Malice has no one to fight, so we're here to fight them again.
Might as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, it's just, obviously any chance to get to, take your robot out or have a fight or, participate in some way is great. But I think that, I think they've done that event before, but it just has to be, you know, interesting, because from my understanding, it's not like that event isn't just about the tournament. There's a lot of other things going on, but that's just one aspect of the event that they do there.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I didn't go to the Remars convention, but I went to a lot of the stuff at the after party. There was so not only was there the robots fighting inside there, but the whole outside was like a big old buffet of food trucks that are like, oh, if you're in the gate, it's all free. But there's a we all found out about a giant cheesecake on a stick that we all of us went over there and got big old chocolate chip cheesecakes that are like fucking yay long. There was that. There was corn. It was good. There was like Sky Entertainers. So it was almost like a little circus thing going on out there. I didn't get to see too much of that, but it was like a whole big old party plus the robot event.
That sounds pretty cool. I mean, because I'm sure that when you have the normal BattleBots tournaments, that everybody, at least at some point, kind of hangs out and stuff. But it's probably not to like that level, that with the big parties and stuff like at Remars.
Yeah, we still hung out a lot. There was a because realistically we only had to fight. once, so you don't have to worry about the post-fight repairs and all that. Everyone brought enough robots that they're like, okay, cool, this was a total loss. We now have another one ready to go. And if you lose, you're already out. So, you know, if you have a bad loss, you don't have to worry about throwing that thing back together.
Well, right. And now, I think because I forget which team I talked about this with, but like now knowing that robot parts are such a collectible market, I think that that makes it like less sad when you lose something that you're
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, but some fans really gonna want this. So, there's like that's a market that people didn't even necessarily know existed until recently.
Yeah, that's actually a hilarious part. Is like, let's talk with Aaron over at Blip, and they swap their wheels after each fight because they're like, it's more like, one, we get new wheels each fight, and two, we can sell these off as one off wheels from each fight, and they're worth more that way.
It's smart. I mean, yeah, it's just now I think now more teams are going to be like, oh well, we could just replace it and get sell this on eBay. So
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting thing now.
they usually set the reserve at about the price it would cost to make a new one. Then that's usually how it goes. Like we were still debating really hard if we want to get rid of that sell the Tombstone blade or not. Because it's like, yeah, that's really cool to have and keep, but also it might go for like a quarter of a jackpot, just because it has a ray attached to it.
Right, exactly. I mean, especially like if you could get him to, if it was autographed or something, then that would
Mm-hmm.
be even more. So yeah, that's just something interesting that's happened more recently. And I did want to ask too, since you have come into this more recently about your experience coming in, because I know there's a lot of new teams that are trying to get in this next year that have, sent in audition tapes and, obviously haven't had the experience yet. But what was it like for you in your first year coming into this? I know that it's a very supportive and welcoming community, but I just kind of want to hear about your personal experience coming into it.
So it's weird for me because I'm new, but I'm not new. I'm new to battle bots. I'm not new to combat robots. So it's just like, oh, I'm seeing all my friends again, but now it's 2 weeks long and the robots are bigger. But the whole getting used to the whole, oh, we need you on deck in 5 minutes, or you can't work on the bot right now. We need you over here to go take some photos, or hey, we need an interview with you right now. That is also just like coming up with little fun shenanigans, like, oh, the robot's done, but hey, we need some B-roll of you working on the robot. So can you go like pretend to work on it? You'll
Right,
see.
it's the TV aspect,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't get from some of these smaller tournaments and things like that. That
Mm-hmm.
definitely has to be unusual because I'm sure you're just used to doing what you do and not like having to have someone tell you, okay, you need to be doing this right now. You need to be doing this right now.
Mm-hmm. But it's also fun because then you get to find. So eventually, they'll realize, oh, the person when they're being authentic is more entertaining than what we were trying to push on them. Because I think they're really starting to lean into the whole, oh, Jeff's a plumber. Jeff has like cheap robots. The rest of his team is all like tradespeople. You know, they're starting to lean into that side of it. They're like, oh yeah, we can use this angle because I think I really hope it gets aired. There's a post-fight interview from this season that's like, I feel like it really captured the feel of like robots for me. And I don't. There's one more grudge left with us that'll be on TV sometime that we fought.
Well, that's cool. I
Yeah.
hope that it is
Mm-hmm.
because I obviously want to see it. Yeah, no, I mean, like, do you ever see teams that, because that's something I'm curious about too, that obviously I think with some teams that there's a certain persona that they would like to see, but I don't know if there are, times where maybe that's not really who the team is, and it's harder to kind of push something that is not authentic to you.
Mm.
I mean, do you feel that at least for you that what what is shown on TV comes across authentically?
It's a weird mix. It's a mix of you trying to play into what they want for a story is, but also like you don't want to give them full on like, oh, they can make you look like this terrible freaking person. Like Ray, they used to try to make Ray like this super villain, and Ray's like the nicest dude you ever meet in the community. Jake, dude, well, man, Jake's a dick, but also he's a lovable dick.
Yeah, because it's that's one of those things that I wonder about, that sometimes you see, some of that, and it's like, okay, how much of it is real and how much of it is not? Because, I think Ray in more recent years has not kind of been the way that he used to be in the past. He's much more just like kind of down to earth. I mean, he still has that confidence, but it's not like it was. And now Jake is that person, who's very like, I'm just gonna be everyone. I mean, how much of that is him, and how much of that is just like playing it up?
A lot of it is him.
Do you think? I mean, like, are there ever any like true you know conflicts or disagreements in BattleBots, or do you think everybody just gets along and maybe after a match someone's upset about something for a minute and then they're fine and everybody goes back to getting along?
A lot of it's all like you said, it's all reactionary. Like you're really upset in a moment, then you're like, it's no big deal, it's metal. But it's sometimes it's you don't really get mad at each other, you get mad at production because they're what caused it to happen sometimes. But
I
a
mean,
lot.
yeah,
Good.
I've noticed that probably more than anything, and that's one other thing that I wanted to ask about, because I've asked a lot of teams, from your perspective, with either some of the things that are newer, like the upper deck, or just other types of rules in general that have caused controversy or conflict or what have you. What if you were the person making battle bots and you were like, I would change this, or I would do this, or I would keep this? Are there certain things that like you feel strongly about that are good things, or things that that they should do away with?
One of the things I stand for is the floor needs to be shittier. The floor is too good, and because the floor is good, everyone has like razor blades in the front of their robots. If the floor is shitty, no one will have razor blades in the front of their robots because they'll get stuck everywhere. But
That's something that's very different from before, because I had done another recent interview where I was talking about the fact that the battle box used to have a lot more hazards than it does today. I mean, you have the kill saws, you have the pulverizers, you have the screws. And last season we had the upper deck, but there's no spikes. They used to have the pads that would spin the robot around a different direction. I mean, there's just a lot less of that. I mean, do you think that there needs to be more of that?
I think, well, they got rid of. I'm going off of like a theory here. I'm pretty sure they got rid of most of the hazards because that's more downtime between fights. If one of those goes wrong and they have to spend a half hour fixing it, you've now lost 2 fights. And now you have the audience sitting there for half an hour while you're working on the robot or working on the arena. So it's definitely a production side thing. Like the new kill saws are like the slots are like a Grand Canyon, but they're a lot more durable. Like the only thing that we really have that goes down is the screws. The screws still fail a lot because you're smacking into them. But like with the deck, it's a static item. Like that can't really break. I mean, it can break. It did break at one point, but it's easier to fix. But
It,
I
it
like.
is. I know. I think the thing that with the upper deck is that that caused the most problems last season was robots getting stuck in it, and people having kind of different feelings about whether a robot should be unstuck, what situations that should happen in. And I know a lot of teams don't even like the upper deck, partially for that reason or other reasons. How do you feel about it?
If you're a horizontal, you hate the upper deck. That's straight up. That's straight across the board. If you're anything that has a big weapon, you don't like the deck. The deck did change a little bit from when we first saw, like 4 weeks before filming. They showed us the original upper deck, what it was going to look like, and it was supposed to have like full walls and everything. So like if you were up there, like you could, the only way out would be driving over to screws. That brings a whole other problem of, oh no, the screws might break now and all that. But I do like the new rules that were on the supporter page. That I think they were, yeah, they were on the supporter page. They're doing away with unsticks. Period. Unless unless two robots are stuck together, that's when they will attempt an unstick after 30 seconds. If you have up to 30 seconds to get unstuck from each other, then they will manually unstick you. And I think if it's less than a minute left, they will put it to a judge's decision. So if you get stuck after a minute 30 seconds into the match, you're because you got 30 seconds from there, then all of a sudden there's a minute left, the match is over. Then I know they changed the ring out rule. Originally there was, if you ring someone out by the door, you're disqualified. But that didn't happen. So, and that didn't happen the 3 times it happened immediately. So now it's if you deliberately put something on fire across there or purposely cause something that would hazard to the arena. But that's up to the discretion of the judges, and you know how that goes.
You never really know. I mean, yeah, I think that, like everybody says, you don't want to go to the judges. I actually think, kind of after going back and watching a lot of the matches that resulted in a judge's decision, that it was pretty consistent, and I think it made sense. But the best thing to do is always to knock the other robot out, because then you don't have to leave it to any kind of decision or anything like that. Especially because damage is obviously the number one at this point, and even if you do the other 2 things well, it's still kind of tough to get those numbers to add up for you.
Yes, that's why I think, except for deadlift, which I think that should have been a knockout anyway. I just kind of kept bumping into them. I don't think we've gone to a judge's decision that I can recall. It's either we knock them out or we're stuck upside down.
I mean, I think some of the best robots are those ones that it's like either you knock the other guy out or you get knocked out, and that's just what it is. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what next season looks like. I'm looking forward to hearing about anything with next season.
So are we.
I'm sure, I know everybody's waiting so patiently, but I feel like something has to happen within the next couple of weeks, because I keep hearing it's going to happen in September. So if it's happening in September, it would have to probably be by the end of July that something would be figured out.
Yeah, because if it did happen like in the last week of September going in October, if we didn't get like news soon, we have like 8 weeks to get everything done. Like I haven't started on anything for the new one yet, because I want to, yeah, we're probably in a good position. We know we're probably going to get in. But I don't want to promise that to sponsors. I don't want to promise that to my wallet. You don't want to promise sponsor stuff, then you buy a bunch of stuff from them at their discounted rate, then you put it all together, then you're like, oh hey, you're not accepted, or oh hey, it's not happening, then you're just stuck with a paperweight.
Yeah, that's the tough part of it. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I feel very strongly from everything that I've heard, it's going to happen. just a matter of when and
Mhm.
how many bots there will be, and
Yeah.
all of that fun stuff. So my personal hope is to get to go this year, because I've never been before, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, flights to Vegas are pretty cheap, so that's not bad.
That is true. Flights are cheap, hotels are cheap. They
That,
want you there so that you will spend all of your money at the casinos.
that's why I like being out of Vegas for like fighting as a hub for like doing combat robots and stuff. Because every flight out into Vegas is always really cheap, so I can go just about anywhere in the country for relatively, I can probably get to anywhere in the country for under $200, which is nice. It's the getting from that place to the event that's the problem most of the time. Like Norwalk. Norwalk's a whole effort to get from New York to Norwalk, Connecticut.
I would imagine. I mean, I know, like, I know it's not like super far, but I mean, it's not like it's an
It's
hour drive.
inconvenient.
Yeah, it's inconvenient. Yeah, for sure. So, we shall see. But I absolutely appreciate having you on on the show. Excited to see what next year brings, and obviously we'll keep following what Jackpot does. Is there anything else that you had before we close out the show?
No, I think it's pretty good. Hopefully soon we can get the full video from Remars out because we did at one point successfully self-write in a competition for once. So it wasn't the most beautiful stuff, right? But it got back over. So we can look forward to that. There's a bunch of you can see how really durable the robot is at Remars. It's crazy.
Well, I am excited to see it. So hopefully, fingers crossed soon. That's coming. Champions is coming. So lots of good stuff on the way. But yeah, so thank you so much. For everybody that watches the show, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. Follow the Facebook page, the Twitter, and we will see you next time on Outside of the Box.